Hello, everyone. You have to excuse the noise in the background. I don't know if you can even hear it, but my I don't got my own studio, so you'll have to excuse that. And in this video, well, we'll be talking about polytheism. At least my perception of polytheism, my understanding of polytheism, or polytheism in the sense that makes most sense to me. So somebody who's an adherent of a polytheistic religion, or somebody who's an expert in any of the references that's made in this video, may disagree, may make their own case, but this is my personalized understanding of this point of view. And in order to make my case, I will make an analogy, and it will be perhaps an odd one, but you just gotta bear with me here, and by the end of it, you'll understand the point I'm trying to make. So here we go. Now, this man, Joe Rogan, he'll be the he'll be my case for my analogy. So obviously, Joe Rogan is somebody who is very successful, who's very influential. He's been influential in my life, certainly. And but what's interesting about him is he's basically turned all his interests and hobbies into something that he's compensated for. So because he has truly excelled in them, and so he doesn't really have a job in the sense that in the conventional understanding. It's not like a 9 to 5 job, and you got a boss and you hate where you go and what you do. It's not like that. It's basically, imagine all your various hobbies and interests, and that's your job. So your enthusiasm for those pursuits would be totally different than you showing up to work a shift job. So now we're just going to go through the various activities that Rogan is involved in. And one of them is obviously him being a commentator on the UFC. And, he's probably the best commentator in the, at least one of the best in the industry, in the art of commentating, I should say. And certainly one of our favorites in the UFC. And here he is interviewing champ Henry Cejudo. Another thing he's well known for is obviously his stand-up. He's got multiple specials out, and you could probably find them on Netflix. And really, really funny, really interesting. And he's accomplished a lot with his stand-up, and he's perhaps aiming for more and bigger achievements when it comes to stand-up, when it comes to his comedy. And Rogan is also a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Here he is with his coach, Jean-Jacques Machado, and I guess one of his teammates, one point in time, Russell Peters, who's I guess not a white belt anymore. He's went up the ranks. I forget what color he was exactly now, but the point is, Rogan has also accomplished a huge deal in the art of jiu-jitsu. And Rogan is also has one of the most powerful kicks in the world. He was back in his youth, back in his, I guess, in his 20s. He was state champ, if I'm not mistaken, in Taekwondo in the state of Massachusetts, where he grew up. And couldn't find any photos of him in his Taekwondo gear, but found this photo of him kicking. So I just slapped it on the presentation or on the slideshow. And Rogan is also big into hunting, particularly crossbow hunting. He's been in this for a couple of years now, and I guess he's made significant strides, and I guess most of his protein he acquires from eating the meat of elk. And finally, his podcast, right? I mean, Rogan has basically become the king of podcasting. And I mean, I've watched it for a long time and I've learned a lot from it. And, perhaps me and many others have a lot to thank for this podcast. It was not only entertaining, but it was also educational. Not only the content of the conversations, but also what you may be, let's say you come across a person that comes on the podcast that you've never heard of before, and then you check out their work, and then you find yourself learning about things that you would never perhaps would have come across otherwise. So Rogan not only facilitates interesting conversations, but he also gives you the opportunity to encounter such intellectuals, such interesting individuals in U.S., Canada, all over the world, pretty much. So here we got now. Here we now basically compartmentalized the life of Joe Rogan into the 6 activities that he engages in and that he excels in. And but you can imagine that there could be certain people who's only interested in Joe Rogan as he engages in one particular activity. Let's say somebody is only a fan of Joe Rogan as he's a commentator on the UFC and doesn't care much about anything else he does. Or they're interested in Joe Rogan as a comedian and doesn't care much for the other various things that he engages in. But the point is, Joe Rogan engages in all of these 6 activities and perhaps some more, and he excels in them. So he's able to express himself in various ways, but he's one person who's great, and his greatness is expressed through various channels. Now, let's extrapolate that analogy to this conception of divinity. Namely polytheism. Now, perhaps you sort of get an idea of where I'm trying to go with this. Let's say now we've basically, divided up Rogan into 6, and the 6 activities that he engages in, and the 6 ways that he expresses himself. Now think about. Now we represented those 6 being the expressions of the one great and powerful Joe Rogan. But now think about the one great and powerful God and the various ways that he may manifest himself in the world or in the realm above. So in that sense, polytheism starts to be somewhat more understandable or perceptible. So all these various depictions of divinity may perhaps just be different expressions of that single greatness, single unity of greatness. And this could be this could be understood not only in the context of Hinduism, but also within the Middle Eastern religions as well, which which Europe and North America would perhaps be more familiar with. Okay, the point I forget to make is no matter how many representations that God may take through the various avatars or or otherwise. It's the one single source that is emanating within all these manifestations. And in Hinduism, they would call that Brahman. Brahman, as distinct from Brahma. There's an N at the end to represent this ultimate true reality, as I understand it to mean. Now, going back to the Middle Eastern reference that I was going to bring up next, I just got the order wrong here. In Jewish philosophy, namely Kabbalah, they have this thing called the Tree of Life, and this is basically supposed to chart out or represent the how the divine energy is emanated from its source to its to this realm, and the various. So this is called the Tree of Life, and the circles are called the Sephirot, and the Sephirot. One of the translations for it is sapphire. So what they're basically doing, the various sapphires, are deflecting the divine light, as it comes from the most from the center of the source where it be most powerful, and then it gets deflected and deflected and deflected, you know, um, down to this to our realm. And uh, all these various sephirot have their own particular characteristics, that an expert on Kabbalah can describe to you. But basically, characteristics, or attributes that is unique or peculiar to each of these sephirot. But the their source of energy is one, and that is Ein Sof, or perhaps arguably could also be represented by the tetragram, as it is here. But as I understand it to be, it's the one ultimate true reality, or the energy that runs through everything. It's the all right, and we proceed. So we talked about Joe Rogan and the various ways he expresses himself through the activities. But it's the one great and powerful Joe Rogan that's expressed in various ways. Now, you could also understand that to be one great, powerful God manifested in several ways, right? A myriad of ways. So we've basically extrapolated the analogy of Joe Rogan to the conception of divinity. But then you could take it a step further, and this would perhaps be a thinking or a point of view that's more aligned with that of Terence McKenna or Alan Watts. That is to say, they would make the case, if I'm not mistaken, that divinity is within not only God and his various manifestations, but we also possess an element of that divinity within ourselves. So we are all manifestations of the one great ultimate true reality. And that divine element that we possess could be called Atman, as it is in Hinduism, or the Pneuma, as it is in Greek, if I'm not mistaken, the divine breath, as it's known. So, yeah, that is that is the point I wanted to make, and hopefully polytheism makes more sense. But the point that is basically trying to be made is that God, in this way of looking at it, is not a being separate from his creation, but rather, and it's not a being or an entity as in one being there to actively engage and interfere, and almost as if a grandmaster is playing chess. It's not like that. It's it's sort of impersonal in that it is an energy that runs through everything, and in this sense, since it includes everything, it's personal in every single way, because everything and everybody is basically manifestation of that divine energy. So another way to put it is that the totality of consciousness is the divine energy, or perhaps the totality of nature and all the energy that runs through it is God. That is the conception of God that that pantheists to like to entertain. Perhaps polytheists do as well. But another one I would like you to consider is panentheism. This conception of God is that nature equates to God, but there's a lot more to God that's beyond our vision, our comprehension, and our understanding, basically. And that is the one, at least at this point in my life, seems most plausible to me, and that's the one I wish to present to you, and hopefully I've done an adequate job. And thanks for hearing out, and stick around, like, share, subscribe.